Hello and welcome to Voices from the Hall, and we're here today high above the Vale of Usk at High Glanau, a remarkable house and quite an unassuming house in many ways, but part of the country house story in the 20th century. It was the creation of Henry Avray Tipping, who was the first architectural editor of Country Life, and this was his final house in a sequence of houses, some of which are in this area. Avray Tipping himself is quite an enigma and really was almost totally forgotten until Helena Gerrish stumbled upon one of his diaries, which gave a whole year in the life of this remarkable country house gentleman of the early 20th century. Tipping came here in the 1920s, bought an estate here and built his final house high on the hill. A house of cottage plan but of considerable amplitude, that's what he called it, was his retirement home. And he created a garden around it and received many guests here, including Edwin Lutyens, Gertrude Jekyll, a whole host of extraordinary names from that time. In 2002, it was bought by Helena and Oliver Gerrish, and Helena took upon it herself to go and do a master's at the University of Bristol, and in so doing opened up the world of Henry Avray Tipping, this extraordinary man. And at the same time began the restoration of this wonderful garden that sits around this, his last home, high above Monmouth, looking across the Vale of Usk to the Skirrid and the Brecon Beacons.
He was born at the Château de Ville d'Avray in France. His parents were renting it for 2 years while they were doing up the house at Braested. So that's why he has the name Henry Avray Tipping, because he always rather liked it.
Because when you came to write the book, there was so little information about this man. Why?
Well, because the thing is, Gertrude Jekyll, who was his exact contemporary, everyone knows the name Gertrude Jekyll, but because Tipping had no family, I think, to remember him, and he was the last of the sort of Tipping family, you know, his name really slipped into oblivion.
Yet he's got this huge legacy in print, and you have found one little thing that helped the book.
That was such fun, because I never found anything very personal about him, and then when I was writing the book, I just had a telephone call from a man in Chepstow, and he said, "Oh, my father was Tipping's coachman," and I've got a few bits of paper, it's in a carrier bag. I said, "Oh, can I come and see them?" So I went to see him, and I took out this tiny little diary, a sort of little waistcoat diary, sort of 2 inches by 2 inches. And he said, "Oh, that's my grandfather's diary." And I lifted it up, and I immediately recognised Tipping's writing and said, "No, this is Tipping's diary." So it was Tipping's diary for 1908, and all the things that I sort of suspected, you know, tea with Gertrude Jekyll, sort of sitting by her fire and having warmth and tea on a sort of rainy day, and visitors like Harold Peto to mount, and all these things sort of fell into place.
And had you heard of Avray Tipping before you came to buy High Glanau?
I had, because as children, you know, my parents had Country Life, and we used to pour through it, you know, choosing houses at the front we wanted to live in, you know, at that age.
That was his idea,
The
wasn't
only
it?
thing was that you really wanted to have a house with a swimming pool.
Then you had one here and you got rid of it.
Anyhow, so I sort of just knew the name Avray Tipping, and I knew he had a connection with Country Life, but I really knew nothing else when we bought this house. But it was really just when we bought this house that I was, I suppose, 50. I really had time for the first time. You know, the children had gone to university. So I had time to really look at the garden and restore it. Every window lines up with the garden features. So this looks south down the sort of ribbon parterre.
Down this long parterre to a pergola at the end.
Yeah, whereas the drawing room outdoor window looks directly down the steps to the octagonal pool.
So it's kind of bringing outdoor grandeur into the house in a way.
Yeah. You know, the arts and crafts movement, the garden and house were always one.
Those are Welsh slates, presumably.
They're Pembrokeshire slates. They've got a slightly sort of green look to them.
It's a lovely
and the roof have got this sort of silvery slates too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that towering chimney.
Yeah. That was the original gardener's cottage, so the gardener lived there overlooking the sort of frame yard and the vegetable garden.
Yeah. rather sweet.
So we've just got this last end of the greenhouse to do.
Yes.
That far bit's got to be glazed. He's just put a new bit of wood in here.
Is it all wooden then? It's not using iron and things?
No, it's all wooden. But it's got this beaver tail glass.
I love
and
that.
the idea is that the water runs down the centre of the pane, not onto the wood.
And not too much of it is smashed then, over the years?
No, I mean we just restore it when we have bits that we need to, really. It's still got Tipping's vine in that he planted, you know, 1923.
Yeah.
So that was all written up in Country Life, and this was the sort of warm vine house end, and then the far end was the cooler end.
Does this all still work?
Yes, it's a hot water system.
From the 1920s?
Yes, and you could turn off the heat. So if you wanted this cold or hot, you could turn off the hot water.
And do you still use it then? Do you still use
Yes, I do still use it.
Are things like those little pineapple finials, are they something you see all over?
Yes, they're original because they're, and they keep the greenhouse walls out with that metal thing, which is very important because actually the weight of the glass is quite heavy.
I bet it is.
You know, because
you don't think about it, do you?
604 panes in this greenhouse, and I have washed every single one and put them back over the winter. But you know, having the vine that he planted is really nice.
Which way should we go? Up that way or that way?
We can go down to the octagonal pool and up. There's all these funny little paths,
little tiny
steps.
secret paths, steps heading everywhere. It's quite a lot of archaeology actually, finding where the old garden was, isn't it? You had a plan by Tipping.
Yeah, we did have a plan, which was really lucky because we knew where to look for things. You know, that's another very romantic sort of flight of steps. And when we came, the pond was completely sort of full of, you know, mud, and we emptied it all out into wheelbarrows.
This is the sort of, if the house is in any moment looking a bit grand, it's just from here.
Yeah.
And you have it sort of sitting high above this, like bastions, these terraces.
But you know, it's very clever the way the garden room doors, they originally slid back, but they go back so that you don't lose the view out to the mountains.
Absolutely.
And these rhododendrons were put in by Tipping. The pink one, which was a pink pearl, was only introduced in 1923.
And how wonderful that's survived. Where should we go? Should we go up? Which bit?
We can go up this way, up to the terraces.
We've got this huge flight of stairs. Oh, and the view now.
Yes, look, now we're getting the view. And
across
you can
the Vale
see,
of Usk.
Yeah, you can
right
see
over
the pointed mountain is the Sugarloaf.
And the Skirrid, where's that?
The Skirrid is to the right, sort of behind the trees. And then the two bumps you can just see in the far distance, that's Penny Fan and Corndu, which are the mountains on the Brecon Beacons.
How wonderful.
Shall we go up to the... We'll go around the front, shall we? Yeah, these azaleas are planted by Tipping, so they're original. They'll be flowering soon.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's very interesting having the plants he planted still here in the garden that he wrote about.
After a lifetime of building gardens and houses, he really distilled what he wanted into this one place, didn't he, in the end?
Yeah, I think he did. I think this was probably his most intimate and his favourite.
Yes.
He hasn't taken the packages in. Right, I'm just painting the door.
Oh, shall I take these in?
Yeah, they can come in, yeah, thank you. Ooh, it's cold, isn't it, now? When I had just finished my degree at Bristol, my garden history degree, I had a group and I said, you know, I've just done my dissertation on Tipping and I've got all this information, I really should write a book. And the professor was marvellous, you know, he said, you're going to come to Bristol, you're going to write your dissertation on Tipping and then you'll write the book. And, you know, he made me really write the book.
So there he is.
Yes, there he is. I mean, he looks rather fierce with these big sort of
eyebrows,
doesn't he? Exactly. And there's the little diary that was sort of, you know, little pocket diary that was
so
only...
E.H. office, to office.
You know, that's Edward Hudson, because of course he never put people's names in. You had to know that, you know, J was Gertrude Jekyll
but he
or
did
Harold
put
Pitto.
at Miss Jekyll's though,
yes,
so he's
exactly.
obviously he would be a bit more respectful of her. And there's
Braisted, and there's his mother, who was really, you know, a Victorian Quaker, you know, long dresses with a sort of lorgnette. But obviously he was very fond of her.
He looks rather like her, actually.
He does, actually, because there he is,
you know, with
his sort of 3 dogs.
Yes. And this is all the woodland gardens, which are still here.
Yeah, the woodland gardens was a very, very big part of it. Yeah, and there's the statue that we've now got at the front door.
Then, because the White Houses were here.
Yes, he was, Sir Benedict Whitehouse was the gynaecologist to the Queen Mother.
Yeah.
And he came here in the sort of, I think, 25, and they sold it sort of after the Second World War.
And then it was lived in by successive people.
Yes. There's actually quite a lot of people. I mean, people haven't really stayed here more than 10 years.
Apart from you.
Yeah, perhaps the garden killed them, I don't know.
Perhaps. Little Shop of Horrors.